Okay, great. I think we'll get started there. So thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar on volunteering. My name is Sam Perks and I am the Sector Support Lead for Physical Activity at Mind, and my role involves supporting the sport and physical activity sector around mental health. I'm also delighted to say that we're joined by Elsa Eagleson from Bath Mind. So Bath Mind are a Get Set to Go mind delivering the programme. So thanks for joining us today, Elsa.
Hello, hi, is everybody? Well, I hope.
So Elsa will be sort of providing a look at what Bath Mind have done around peer support and also Get Set to Go. So obviously we know it's a very challenging time at the moment, so we really do hope you're able to take care of yourselves and have the ability to focus on your mental health and well-being, and also on the things that you enjoy, because it's never been so important as it is now. So this webinar is our third one of our new webinar series, which we're hoping will continue for the next 12 months and potentially beyond. And we're delivering this webinar today to celebrate Volunteers Week. And the webinar aims to provide you with a very brief overview of peer support. We're going to look at the learning and some tips from our Get Set to Go programme in terms of volunteering and peer volunteers. And then we're going to provide some information around our upcoming Mental Health Champions Toolkit. So just a little bit of housekeeping. So all microphones are muted at the moment, so that's just to avoid background noise. We do have the chat function box, so please do ask questions or use that for interactive elements of this webinar. We do have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar as well, so hopefully we'll run through all your questions then. And then this webinar is going to be recorded, and we'll add subtitles to it, and then we'll upload it to our YouTube and website in the next couple of weeks. So we would just suggest maybe turning off your video and webcams just in case, because that is actually picked up during the recording. So yeah, just a suggestion. Obviously, we'd love to see your faces during this difficult time. I think we're seeing more and more people through Zoom and Teams than ever before. So, but yeah, just a bit of suggestion there. So this webinar, so we're going to be covering the following. So we're going to be providing some information on peer support. We're then going to be looking at the learning and insight from volunteering within the Get Set to Go programme. And then we were hoping to actually launch our brand new Mental Health Champions Toolkit today. But unfortunately, this has been delayed due to coronavirus. However, we are still able to run through what the toolkit looks like and what it will include and how it can help you. So hopefully that is still useful to you. And then, like I mentioned, we've got our question and answer session at the end. But before we get started, it'd be great to know so what role you play within volunteering. So hopefully on your screen, you'll be asked the question, what role do you play in volunteering? And be given 4 options. You are, I believe, able to enter more than one choice, as we understand you may have different roles. But yeah, I'll give you a couple of moments just to fill that out. Okay, great. Quite a mix. So hopefully you can see those on the screen. So yeah, the top one is your role involves managing or coordinating a volunteer programme. but it is very mixed across the board. So really good to understand who's joining today. And what I'd say is, please feel free, to use the chat box to introduce yourself, your role, where you work, and the volunteer program you may work on, or if you're a volunteer yourself, where you volunteer. We have found that these webinars are quite good with joining up people with similar experiences. So throughout the webinar, feel free to just use a chat box, or even to message other people privately if you'd like. So, peer support. So we're just going to have a quick look at what peer support is and some examples of it, as it can be a really effective way to involve people with lived experience in your activities. But what exactly is peer support? And we do get asked this quite a lot. In the simplest sense, peer support is where people use their own experiences to help others. And so within mental health, it's about people with previous experiences, or even they have current experience of mental health problems. They use that experience to help others in a similar situation. And there are different types of peer support, but they all aim to bring together people with shared experiences to support each other. They provide a space where people feel accepted and understood. It's the ability to treat everyone's experiences as being equally important. And it involves both giving and receiving support. So peer support, or someone providing peer support, is not a one-way street. And Minds and the local Minds across England and Wales, there's about 120 local Minds providing localised support. We use peer support as a method to improve well-being and help people cope with mental health problems. It can be helpful on its own, or it can be used alongside other treatments like talking therapies and medication. And peer support can be effective in helping people to open up about how they are feeling and what they are experiencing. It also introduces people to the ideas and approaches that others may have found useful. It reassures people that they're not alone in how they are feeling. It helps people to connect and gives them a sense of well-being and belonging. It builds self-esteem and confidence, and it helps people to feel more hopeful about the future. So we want to provide just a brief overview of peer support today, because it is hugely useful and we've used it within Get Set to Go. So at the bottom of that slide, we have included a link to our Developing Peer Support in the Community Toolkit. And this provides lots of information, tools and templates around how you could potentially implement peer support within your organisation, club or group. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to Ilse, who will provide a bit of information around peer support at Bath Mind.
So hello everyone. The first thing we'd like to say is Bath Mind have many staff with lived experience, and a good proportion of our volunteers who come through initially as a volunteer, like for example Hannah, who now runs our very successful training department, was a volunteer interested in wellbeing in the workplace because of the experiences she'd had in her workplace, and she has now gone on to work for us. So we do have a good pathway of volunteers actually ending up becoming employed by Bath Mind. We also have a members panel. This is a group of of 8 individuals with lived experience who are pulled from all of our different services, and they meet together every 2 weeks, and they help us influence any strategic direction, and they oversee things such as some of our policies, they update our resources section on the website, and they sit on our interview panels. So that is a lovely group who sit very much beside our trustees in the management of Bathmind. We're lucky in Bath in that we have a good flow of constant volunteers who actually come through some of the training we are delivering. So we're delivering healthy universities up at Bathmind. We also have Bath Spa. So a lot of the people that come through to us as initial volunteers also then may go on to become coaches of some of the Get Set to Go, or come and support some of our other peer support groups. We also have a sort of circular model, which is really lovely. This is sort of peer support at its best. So through Get Set to Go, one of our clients, Robert, we visited him with a peer volunteer 3 or 4 times in his home. He was very isolated. He had urinary tract issues. He didn't want to get on public transport. He wanted to stay very close to home. He was quite paranoid, possible personality disorder. And we had to visit him 3 or 4 times. Then he agreed to join a group, and we had to give him a wake-up call every week to go to that group. And we started off by giving him a lift. Then he began to actually get walk down to the group by himself, and this was to do New Age curling. And he loved New Age curling so much that after 16 weeks he joined Twerton Support Group and introduced that group to the New Age curling, and he was the champion then, and they all loved it so much that they now independently every 3 weeks book the room hire themselves to play New Age curling. And that's just a lovely example of how some of the people we support go on then, and Robert's journey was quite a quick journey actually, to then he felt confident enough to show the rest of the group what he had learned and to encourage them to play. COVID-19 has presented, well at me. At the moment we are helping our participants to coordinate, and it was inspired really by some of the resources from National Mind through Get Set to Go. But Well at Me, we're hoping will be a 20 bite-sized training course, skills development that people can dip into and do when they feel well or not, maybe in 4 weeks bite size. But this is being co-designed at the moment by some of our participants, and that will cover things like managing stress and resilience, but then a lot more practical training to be involved in some of our services, which include ecotherapy, horticulture at the allotments, also bringing your skills to share at a peer-led group, creativity, and also our Food for Thought social enterprise around catering. So we're just developing that at the moment, but that's very much designed by participants who have gone through our services. COVID-19 has presented challenges, but also for us, we've been really actually very surprised at how well people have embraced Zoom and new technologies, and very proud of how people have come on and done some really good work. So our peer support groups are all still meeting now via Zoom, and we even had an instance last week where somebody's mother ran a music session for everybody on the Zoom peer support group. So that's really good, and we're getting new members all the time and new referrals coming and joining that. We've also seen a massive step up in our social media, and we've gone from about 900 followers on Twitter to over 2,200. And we've got blogger Gwen, she's got lived experience, and many advocates. And through our Time to Change work as an organic hub, we never got the funding for that, but we still develop a lot of that work. And we've got a lot of great champions who are out there telling their stories. Also, with our peer support, we have got some more intensive groups where Bathmind always have to be there on a weekly basis to help the dynamic, but we've been very good at drawing out of some of the other support groups. So Bathmind may only pop in every 2 to 3 weeks now to see how the group are going, and they're really well supported by our peer volunteers in between those sessions. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is we are developing some good partnership work. I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but an example of that is St Mungo's have an accredited peer support program, and we see an overlap there with many of our peer volunteers and participants going on that. And then we share resources via the volunteer pass. So everybody in the third sector of Bath can post their training, and all volunteers anywhere can then share with that training. So those are just some of the key highlights really of some of the peer support work happening at Bath Mind.
Brilliant, thank you. Also, really good overview of what's going on at Bath Mind. I would say that local minds deliver peer support in a variety of ways and at different levels. So if you are interested in how to maybe develop peer support within your organisation, club or group, then please do get in touch with the local minds, as they can definitely help you with that. And some great examples there, Ilse. Thank you so much. Oh, as we've just got a question from Sarah, are any of the courses you offer free? So we're actually got a slide later on with all training which is specific to mental health and physical activity. Any of the training you mentioned there, Ilse, is that free?
So yes, the volunteer pass, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, is a collaboration of charities have come together, and we all offer our training free, because we can see that in the end that those volunteers, when they've accessed all of that training, so St Mungo's, for example, do boundaries and safeguarding, Salvation Army do the first aid, we deliver the mental health first aid, and we part fund one volunteer who's been dedicated for a little while to go on that through. So all of the charities offer 1 or 2 bits of training for free, but then every volunteer across BINS can access that, and it's a really good model. Hope that answers your question. Yeah,
I think so, yes, definitely. And like I say, you might run through that in a bit more detail in a second. So yes, moving from peer support onto Get Set to Go volunteering. So the Get Set to Go programme is funded by the National Lottery and Sport England, as well as funds raised through our partnership with the English Football League. And what Get Set to Go aims to achieve is to help people experiencing mental health problems to benefit from being physically active. And volunteering is a key component of Get Set to Go, as sort of highlighted by Ilse already. And so the local minds, so around about 27 who have delivered Get Set to Go to date, they are actually tasked with recruiting peer volunteers to support the programme. Now, the peer volunteer role is to use their experiences to support people experiencing mental health problems to be more active. They build confidence so that those people can access community sports provision. They also offer encouragement and motivation to participants to help them overcome any barriers they may be facing in terms of getting active or maintaining activities. And peer volunteers support people with mental health problems or experiencing mental health problems to build a regular physical activity habit. And the peer volunteer role may involve the following activities. So they may organise, deliver or support taster sessions or regular group activities. They may signpost participants to suitable community-based activities. So that could be gyms that are particularly inclusive or accessible, or even local clubs. And they can even provide one-to-one support, such as attending sessions and activities with an individual. But it's important to note that the peer volunteer role depends completely on the individual and what they feel comfortable and confident doing. We wanted to highlight this graph, so hopefully it's come up okay on your screens, because there's quite a lot of reasons why people volunteer in Get Set to Go. But we wanted to highlight the top, well, 3 of the top 4, which are in bold, as they are fueled by intrinsic motivating factors. So in layman's term, that's where volunteering actually resonates with people's values. So these include things like to make a difference in my local area, the cause is important to me, and to help people. The reason why we wanted to just bring this up today is we've used that within other volunteer opportunities to recruit individuals to roles. And it may be useful in your advertisement and promotion of volunteer opportunities when you need to recruit people to your organisation, clubs or group. And with the stats on the previous slide, we want to give you some takeaway information, learning and tips to help you in your volunteer programs, whether it be within an organisation, so at a high level, or if it's at a local level where it's within a local club or group. So the first big thing for us is encourage participants to volunteer if it's appropriate for them. And this has been one of the best forms of recruitment for volunteers within Get Set to Go. And it's about speaking to those participants and finding out if they would like to volunteer, and slowly but surely finding them an opportunity that is relevant for them. And linked to that, it's really important to focus on what the volunteer wants to get out of the experience, as this will mean that the volunteer has a better experience, which is more rewarding, and also that will ensure that they keep coming back. As mentioned a little earlier, provide different levels of opportunities. So this ensures you reach a wide audience of potential volunteers. It also helps volunteers to build confidence, skills and capacity at a pace that they are happy with. So, for example, some of the pathways we've had within Get Set to Go include a volunteer meeting and greeting new participants, then moving on to budging with them, and then finally becoming a peer volunteer. In terms of delivery, volunteers have supported with warm-ups and cool-downs, then moved on to supporting or even leading on a specific activity within a session, and then eventually leading on a session. And linked to that is we've found within Get Set to Go that's really important to provide volunteers with training and development opportunities. And so with Sport England, we developed a volunteer plan, which is implemented by the local minds delivering the programme. And this involves an in-depth induction for each volunteer at the start of their journey. And it also means providing training opportunities throughout. So, for example, local minds are provided funding for volunteers to complete training, such as coaching qualifications. And this really helps with the sustainability of the programme and to upskill volunteers in potentially a skill that they could use for a new career. And then the final thing that we've found really, really important is building in time for volunteers to meet up, as it provides opportunities to socialise, celebrate, and also support each other. That element of peer support we were discussing earlier is really, really important. So that's just some key learning and tips from us, but to really bring it to life, I'll hand back over to Ilse.
So Get Set to Go really helped develop our model. It's been really useful for Bathmind, actually. There were some really great resources and toolkits. We didn't necessarily have a very defined volunteer process before we started Get Set to Go. We were quite a small, we had 20 sort of staff. We were around the 500 turnover mark, but we were really influenced by a lot of the things that came. This was the first bit of funding we'd accessed from Mind. Just even very simple things like how we did our photo permission forms, how we did our evaluations moving into the future. There was the lovely, I think it was the Well at Me sort of planning thing for participants through Get Set to Go. So we've used a lot of that, and it's now become sort of interwoven into some of the processes at Bathmind. So on that side of things, we find things very useful. It also helps us to access wider funding. We really are convinced that we help get some money from the Inns Public Health team, and then also the Tackling Loneliness Fund from the lottery, based on some of the really good work we've been doing with the one-to-one model. using Get Set to Go, and also it helps us broaden our reach. So we did start working with the target groups that we'd wanted to in Get Set to Go, which were refugees, Syrian ladies, Muslim community. So it really helped us to broaden the reach of people we were working with in mind. Some of the challenges we find were that sometimes there was a bit of a blurry line between volunteers and participants. So some peer volunteers, their mental health would obviously fluctuate as well, and they may have been set up to do some one-to-one support to take people to groups, but then they weren't feeling well enough to turn up on that day. So some of these issues around also matching for the one-to-one work, the participants with a peer volunteer, soon led us to discover that we really needed to employ a volunteer manager, because at that point we did not have a volunteer coordinator in Bathmind, and we were trying to do it in-house, and we'd been wanting to do it for a little while, but Get Set to Go definitely was the catalyst to help our CEO take the jump to enable us to employ that volunteer coordinator, which is actually quite vital. That was some of the challenges. We're also around working with some of our mainstream settings, but that's for another day. One of the really good things that I talked about briefly earlier was the volunteer pass. So just as you said, Sam, that training that is available to volunteers is really, really key. We were lucky that at the same time as developing this, St Mungo's and ourselves and a group of other people were involved in setting up the volunteer pass. So that is the idea that any volunteer across BANS can share this, get access to the same training from lots of different organisations. And also we wanted to share DBSs and things. It's still not got to that stage. I think that's a lot of people's dreams. But then that volunteer can then cross over between projects and organisations. So this has worked very well for us. For example, with the Carers Centre, we joined up to run the Tai Chi, and then we saw an overlap in our volunteers. And it was really good for them to get access to the same sort of training, which was managing challenging behaviour, boundaries, safeguarding, the 3R mental health awareness. And actually, towards the end of the project, we needed to do escalation training even, because it's quite key that some of the stuff that was being disclosed to some of our peer volunteers needed to be taken further. So we had a lot of that sort of work because of the complexities of people coming to some of the groups and the sessions and the information that they were divulging. So as I mentioned before, we employed a volunteer coordinator, which is going brilliantly. It is Volunteer Week. We've now got, I think it's 48 active, really, really core, great volunteers. And like I mentioned, they're doing a range of everything. And a lot of them are supporting the sessions that we still do, which are the new age curling, Tai Chi, swimming. We've got lots of things going on in terms of just peer groups that meet an activity model. So they've been brilliant in helping support all of that. I must say, yeah, now we are sort of expanding quite a bit, and only today I've heard that we have got an opportunity to take on some befriending. And again, I think that's the strength of the model from Get Set to Go, and people seeing the good work we were doing one-to-one that has enabled us to begin to look and be commissioned to do that. Other thing I just wanted to let you know about, because of our volunteering, we also, I don't know if any of you might have heard of it, it was the NHS Integrated Volunteering Programme, and that was where the local sustainability transformation partnerships could look at how they could use volunteering in NHS settings. So Bathmind worked very closely with our Bath Swindon Wiltshire group, and unfortunately it's all been postponed because of COVID, but one of the things we were looking at there was, because of Get Set to Go and our volunteers wanting to work in mental health, was to do a big sort of training program around that. And then we were talking to the RUH about having crisis companion volunteers in the wards in the hospital. So that's still ongoing. Obviously it's all been postponed in the meantime, but what I would say about that is they've got a really good program through Health Force, and also they had developed in the Pennines through this program a similar type of thing to our local volunteer pass. So their one is much more national, and I'll send the link to Sam afterwards so you can have a look. But on there, and it is is more to do with NHS settings, so some of that's around infection control, but some of it you can dip into, so it's a useful programme. It's still in prototype, but you can have a look at that because it's free and online and Open University accredited volunteering, so some of that might be interesting for some people. In terms of volunteer recruitment, as I mentioned before, and it's interesting you say that, Sam, why people did want to volunteer. We got a lot of volunteers from Bath University, especially. And one of the reasons they were saying they wanted to volunteer was because they found the pressure was quite big. Bath University is a sporting university. So people were feeling quite intimidated and pressured about joining some of the sports activity up there because it was sort of a very sort of anyway, so they wanted to join some sporting opportunity which was less formal, which was more fun, which was more about just taking part for the sake of it. So we actually saw a high percentage of our peer volunteers be from the University of Bath for that reason, and a lot of them have said that because of volunteering, it's swayed what they want to go into. So they want to be exercise psychologists, they want to be something around well-being, mental health sports officers. So that's been really, really good experience on the ground for some of those peer volunteers. Also, Bath have just launched something called Compassionate Communities, which is headed up by the third sector. So since COVID, amazingly across Baines, 2,500 volunteers signed up within 2 weeks to be on the ground helping support people. So our CEO is on the board of that third sector group, and at the moment they're looking at how volunteering generally across the whole of Bath can be much more joined up. And what a good thing for us is we're working in a hub in Peasdown St John, and all these people we have worked with in the past, we're all now sharing the same space. So these are people like Virgin Care, this is Curo Housing, Age UK, Citizens Advice Baines, and now we're all actually working together. It is all obviously going to help us work much more in a more consolidated way moving forward. So yeah, the impact of Get Set to Go has been quite big on Bath Mind. We genuinely feel that we are integrating the peer model much more now. We've got more case studies, we've got more people wanting to share their stories and media champions. We've got more trainers out there with lived experience. And as I've mentioned before, some of our peer volunteers have gone on to lead coaching sessions. So it's all really good, really. We couldn't have done any of all of that without some of our key partners, which included the public health team here in Bath. We've got something called the Wellbeing College, where it lists everything creative, sporty, relaxation, provided by all the third sector that people can get involved in. And St Mungo's, and especially Westport. Westport have been really, really great at helping us find people to take part in the mental health awareness for the sports sector training. And then also our mainstream settings like the leisure centres and village halls, because we did find that a lot of people wanted to go to a space where they felt safe and secure, because they felt some of the larger spaces like leisure centres were a bit too intimidating for them for where they were at. So yeah, we would like to thank Mind, because actually we do think that the Get Set to Go has been very influential, and especially moving forward now as well in terms of participants taking part even now, doing their own Zoom and Skypes and meetings and sets up like that. So I hope that's enough, and I'm happy to take any questions later on or talk to anybody afterwards about our programme.
Brilliant, thanks Ilse. And I was just going to say, there's some great examples there within Bath and Somerset, but within your areas around the country, there will be things going on, and I'm sure many of you are aware of those already, but if not, there is lots out there, and I think sometimes it is overwhelming. I think what Bath's done is brilliant with the volunteer pass, and obviously the Health Force programme sounds amazing as well. So we'll include links in the follow-up email in the slides so that you can take a look at those as well. But yeah, thank you so much for that, Ilse. Great overview. Okay, so as mentioned, we were hoping to launch our toolkit around champions today, but this has been delayed due to the impact of coronavirus. We are hoping it'll be ready within the next few weeks. So as soon as it is live, we will send it on to everyone who's signed up for this webinar today. But we are still able to sort of showcase what is included within the toolkit and why we've created it. So firstly, why is it needed? Well, the sector, the sport and physical activity sector, has made significant progress around mental health, but there's still more to be done. And we've found through mental health champions or well-being ambassador schemes that they've been really successful in increasing mental health awareness, reducing stigma, and improving support for those experiencing mental health problems in the sport and physical activity sector. And so what we're trying to achieve through this toolkit is providing organisations with what a champion scheme looks like and how they can establish one in their organisation, club or group. So the toolkit is for organisations, clubs and groups within the sector. And it's for those who really want to support the mental health and well-being of their members, staff, volunteers and participants. So what is the toolkit? Well, we've supported several organisations to establish champion schemes over the last few years. And as a result, we wanted to share the learning and good practice from those to help others to implement their own schemes. And the toolkit has a range of tools and templates to help you to establish your own scheme. So we'll just quickly run through the content within the Champions Toolkit. So it starts off with an introduction. So what are mental health champions? Who can be a champion? And that is anyone. What's involved in setting up the champion scheme? And then finally, we introduce the two types of champion schemes that we've identified. And these are workplace mental health champions and community mental health champions. So starting with the first one, workplace champions are employees within an organisation. They challenge stigma and encourage positive mental health in the organisation and for its workforce. Now, the champions don't replicate or duplicate the important role of HR. Instead, they work alongside the HR team to create a positive mental health at work experience for everyone. The community mental health champions are local club or group volunteers, and they promote the benefits of sports and physical activity in maintaining and improving mental health in our local communities. And each of those two sections follows a how to establish a scheme for your organisation, club or group. And it's broken down into three parts, which is design, develop and deliver. And within those parts, we include good practice and learning, and then also practical tools and templates to help you. The fourth section looks at the support available to the person or team coordinating the champion scheme and to the champions themselves. So this looks at training, resources, and other elements like our regional networks. And then at the end is the appendices, which is where all the tools and templates listed throughout the toolkit are highlighted. So just to give a brief overview of some of those templates, so we've got action plans, application forms and role descriptions. We've then got tools and guidance around setting and maintaining boundaries, how to have conversations around mental health, what additional services champions could signpost to, and then finally, self-care and how to look after your own mental health and well-being. So that's just a quick snapshot of what will be included in the toolkit. Like I say, hopefully we'll be able to send that on to you in the next couple of weeks. And we just wanted to highlight some other support that is available to you around peer support, volunteering, and even champion schemes. This includes a wide range of resources. I won't go through these in too much detail, but we've got our influence and participation toolkit, which helps you to engage people with lived experience of mental health problems in their work. We've got our peer support toolkit, which we mentioned earlier. Sorry, Lisa, just seeing your question. There won't be a cost to the toolkit. It will be completely free. We've also got a toolkit for mental health providers and one for sports providers, and they provide some practical guidance on how to support people with mental health problems to take up volunteering. And then finally, we've got our mental health support for the sports and physical activity sector guide. So that lists all of the support that you can access from Mind around physical activity. And what we've also created for this webinar is a spotlight on Get Set to Go volunteering. So this is a brand new resource, and it will give you an overview of many of the elements that we've covered in today's webinar. And then looking at some training. So this highlights the different training available to volunteers, champions, and anyone within the sports sector. And it's broken down into different levels. And if you haven't heard already, our mental health awareness for sports and physical activity e-learning is now free until the end of August. So that's the second one in that table. So it's a great time to maybe for yourself to do that course or to pass it on to any of your volunteers or workforce. I just wanted to quickly cover our regional networks. This could be really useful for sharing ideas and good practice. So the network programme aims to bring together sports, physical activity and mental health organisations at a local to regional level. And the aim of the programme is to improve collaboration, provide networking opportunities and share learning and good practice. And that obviously includes volunteering as well. And each network has a lead organisation, which we refer to as hubs. And this slide just showcases the 8 networks and their associated hub. So feel free to get in touch with them and see how you can get involved. There currently isn't a network in London, but we are working closely with London Sports and Greater London Authority to see how we can support the region. And then very finally from me, all of our webinars will be uploaded to our Eventbrite page in the coming weeks and months, and they will be promoted through our monthly newsletter. And then if you're looking for reliable information around coronavirus and mental health, please do see our toolkit, as that includes resources and information on young people's well-being, how you can support your children's mental health and well-being, managing stress, and many more. And that is all the content there. So just in time, but obviously we want to open the floor to any questions you may have for myself or Ilse around anything we've covered today or anything volunteer related. So yeah, feel free to add into the group chat if you have any questions.
Yeah, hi, it's Sarah here.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for all of that. It's really, really interesting, and I'm just dipping in between following you and looking on my phone at the same time to find information. If we'd like to get involved kind of straight away, obviously there's different sections on your website on which bits to be involved in, but appreciate we can't do face-to-face stuff. Is it better to do an email, give you a ring, have a chat after, or how can I just literally just want to jump in and start being involved?
Brilliant, yeah, definitely, Sarah. I would say if you email, if it's sport related, then email sport@mind.org.uk, and then we can sort of start the conversation from there and then potentially schedule a call and run through that in more detail if that's useful.
Thank you, appreciate that. And if there was more of the other side as well, again, is there another direct email?
I would say that's best to go through our generic Mind email address, which is info@mind.org.uk.
Thank you. And can we link up with you guys on LinkedIn or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. In terms of Mind, obviously we showcase quite a lot, and then we have a mental health charter for sports and recreation, LinkedIn, and obviously I have my personal one. So yeah, feel free to.
Superb. Thank you to both of you. Thank you so much.
No problem, Sarah. Thank you. Kyle asks, how do we support volunteers with their mental health to help them provide suitable peer support? One of the big things, and Lisa, also, sorry, please feel free to jump in at any point, but we ask local minds within Get Set to Go to sort of have supervisions throughout the volunteers' journey with a local mind. So this is to discuss if they have any training needs, if they have any concerns around what they're doing, their role, and if they would like to scale down or even scale up their volunteering. I don't know also if you've got anything.
So we did sort of peer reflection, which is what we do for all of our staff anyway. Our volunteers were invited into that because there were some tricky and challenging instances which maybe some of the peer volunteers weren't quite felt ready to deal with at the time. So the peer reflection was really good. We did that on a sort of monthly basis or more when it was needed. We also did the same with all our volunteers. They were getting their appraisals, like Sam said. We also sent out sort of a weekly newsletter, 2 weekly, just saying if you've got any issues, get in touch with us. There was also something that you provided, which was your own wellbeing sort of action plan, your own looking after your mental health. We also provided that for our peer volunteers. But yeah, there were instances where things were quite challenging and people did really need to talk. So there was always myself and or 2 or 3 other people within Bath Mind that our participants could talk to at any time that they needed to.
Brilliant, thanks Ilse. And good question, Carl, I like it. And what I'd say is that spotlight on Get Set to Go volunteering, which we'll send out with the follow-up email, does include a lot of that information as well. It's just limited by time. We obviously want to include as much as we can, but missed out on that. But thanks for the question, Carl. Sporting memories, really good question around what should they include in a volunteer wellbeing survey. I would suggest that actually maybe we take that offline. So if you email sport@mind.org.uk, we can run through that in more detail. But within Get Set to Go, we actually use the recall framework. So I can run through that in a bit more detail offline to help you with that. Cara asked about, will the presentation be sent out? Yeah, so we're hoping in the next week we'll be able to have the video subtitled, uploaded to our YouTube, and then we'll send that out with all the links and the slides and any other information that we've covered today. Amy, is there no regional network in Northern Ireland? There isn't. So this programme is funded by Sport England. So it is focused on the 9 English counties. But we do actually link in with our sort of colleagues in sort of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales around the learning from this programme, and it might be something that we can expand to different areas as well. Thanks everyone. Alex, you ask, the local minds having funding for coaching qualifications, does this sit with the regional hubs? It doesn't, it sits with the local minds themselves. So for instance, Ilse at Bath Mind, that will be given specifically to them. Get Set to Go and the regional networks are separate. But it's always worth getting in touch with your local mind or your Get Set to Go local mind to see what they have on offer. And I know quite a few of the regional hubs are on this webinar, and they are providing huge amount of support to organisations and individuals within each of the regions. So good to get involved with that as well. Brilliant. Are there any other questions? Sorry, I've slightly run over. A lot of content today. If you do have questions for myself or Ilse afterwards, as I've mentioned, email us at sport@mind.org.uk and we'll get back to you with an answer. But I suppose that concludes our webinar today. So I really want to say thank you for joining. There will be more webinars to come, and hopefully you found this useful. A massive thank you to Ilse for supporting us today. It was great to have that knowledge and experience from BathMind to share with everyone. Hopefully you found that useful as well. So as I said at the start, please do take care of yourselves and others during this challenging times, and we look forward to seeing you even over a screen in the near future. So thank you very much and have a good day.